need the input, and those are the hardest ones to get.
Jay-Z also has Rock Nation. They're doing stuff. But it's like, we need to kind of try to
One of my
each other.
historical mentors, John Henry Clark, who passed away a few years back, he said, two things he said I thought were wonderful. He said, we don't need any more people in the entertainment business, people in sports, or people in marketing. We need miners and farmers. We don't own any means of production from start to finish. We need shoe companies.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. My name is Daniel Danielson, and just sort of to go down, just really, I want to say, I just thank you so much for your time, and just to be here for Newhouse and for Gita and Sister Judy, yeah, and also Dinky. Yeah, thank you so much. Hi.
Daniel.
Yeah, I'm Daniel. Yeah. My aunt was Posey Lombard, so yeah, so it's emotional for me to just be here. I'm also working with Robert Raven. We're filmmakers, so our project, just to sort of piggyback on what this last conversation was about, our project is titled Black Privilege, White Power, and it's a story that follows Posey Lombard, who was a Smith College student who joined Freedom Summer, SNCC, volunteers Freedom Summer. So most of the story I've been told by word of mouth, and also through Dinky, a lot of conversations over the years, Junius Williams, Judy Coburn, what I want to get to with the question, I did want to just mention the title because Rock Nation has turned us down, but we won't stop, and we need help. So if anybody wants to help make a good film, we've been working for a couple years, it's exciting, and it is focused on the younger generation, the work that y'all did, and how it relates to the younger generation. So it's a period piece, and we want to show how these students just threw themselves on the sword, and it's just amazing. So to get more to the question is, and other people have been talking about this, I love what everybody's talking about, but I've read extensive literature on the work that y'all did. In the literature that I read, it's detailed. You talk about Stokely, and not just Stokely, Worth himself. When I talk to Worth, he's like, sometimes it just goes way over my head because he's talking about they wrote letters to the general of the Navy base in Selma, like they wrote the White House. But I'm looking at some of the minutes, I'm reading the minutes, and there's one part that really gets me where the students, SNCC realizes that some of the storefronts in Alabama actually were receiving money from the Small Business Association, and so then they write to the White House and say, well, look, these people are receiving federal money, but what I'm getting at is you did so much distinct work. Like, it's not a little bit, it's not a lot. It's just overwhelming the amount of detailed work that you did in just like 3 years, let's just say that time. It's more than that. You talk about the Watts line, you talk about the fleet of cars that Jim Foreman did. It's even hard to try to duplicate that now. If we try to come together and try to duplicate that now.
Absolutely, and let me just pick up on something that you said. We understood the corporate power, and part of that was Jack Minnis. Okay, Jack Minnis had a research department. As a matter of fact, the story about the Panther, it's actually Ruth Howard, who is a good friend of mine. Ruth Howard, who we saw in here, in terms of talking about the Panther, right? She first goes with the Dove to Jack Minnis. Old, crusty old white guy sitting in the research department, smoke-filled room, books galore, just got research for a stone, right, before there's any internet. And she says to him, oh, I got this Dove. Like, I'm getting this from Ruth. She said, I showed it to him, and he said, it's too passive. So she goes back out of his office. Somebody in the SNCC office says, because we were in Wilcox County at that point with Stokely, which was right adjoining Lowndes. We'd come into the national office. And so Ruth is saying, okay, so he says it's too passive. She comes out and somebody says, Clark College, the HBCU in Atlanta, they have as their mascot, right, the Panther. So she goes over to the campus and she does a rubbing of the yearbook to get the Panther. She comes back. Dottie does a little bit more work on it. It then goes to Lowndes County.